So Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned that the Abrar, doers of good, they will be in all the levels of life. In this life, in their grave, and the hereafter, they will be in na'im, they will be in pleasure. And the doers of evil, they will be in jahim, they will be in difficulty, in living hell, or in hell in this life and the next. May Allah protect all of us from that. In Surah An-Nazi'at, from verse 38 to 41, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فأما من طغى وآثر الحياة الدنيا فإن الجحيم هي المأوى. That whoever transgresses and prefers the life of this dunya, this worldly life, then the jahim, meaning the hellfire, will be his abode. May Allah protect us from that. And then he goes on to say, subhanahu wa ta'ala, وأما من خاف مقام ربه ونهى النفس عن الهوى فإن الجنة هي المأوى. That whoever fears the position of his Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala and forbids himself from the hawa, from his desires, then verily the Jannah, the paradise, will be his abode. Look at the difference between the two. May Allah grant us all the Jannah and protect us from the hellfire. The second point he mentioned, rahimahullah, was the mukhalafa of the hawa of the people, to go against the desires of the people. And this happens, as he mentioned, with two ways: not following them if they go astray, and not going astray behind their desires. One of the two. And if they go astray and then you follow them, or they want you to go astray, they want to pull you with them, then you must be strong and not follow them in this if you want to be able to defeat your own hawa, your own desires. And if we look at this, for example, a great example for that would be the hijab of the women today. The hijab in the Muslim world today, it started to what? Fade. Slowly, but I don't want to say surely, it sounds bad, but that's the reality, unfortunately. This is what's happening now, is the hijab is going slowly, and then it's almost not there. And why is this? Because where's the pressure coming from? The peer pressure. The pressure of society to be in with the latest, the moda, the newest trends and what have you. So she wants to look modern. And she wants people to accept her. So she follows this. She follows shaitan. She follows what the people want, and she doesn't follow what Allah wants. It's difficult, no doubt. But this is the trap of a shaitan. He's calling her to this. So she does, and when she gives into this, obviously, this is what happens. She's not successful because she's giving into the desires of the people. And now it's even become to the extent where you'll find women wearing pants and shirt and wearing a scarf, and this is hijab, mashallah. And we had the one from Bahrain with the skin-tight clothes on, running in the Olympics, and she's muhajjaba, mashallah. She's wearing hijab, subhanallah. I say she's better than the other ones, no doubt about that. But still, it's not a hijab at the end of the day. And this is where the shaitan is fooling the women now. And so you know that you are actually making Islam look even worse. And I'll tell you what happened to me when I was in a dawah organization in Sudan. They called me, there was two French doctors they were students who were about to become doctors, I think last year, and they had like an exchange program between the students who came from Sudan and some went to France and what have you. So there was a lady and a man. The man, he had a big problem with the hijab. And he said, one of the things I can't understand, he said, why do they have to cover their heads? And I said, hijab is wajib, this and this and this. He said, but the thing is, he said, they have so much makeup on, and their clothes are so tight anyways. He said, they said it doesn't make sense for them to have something in their head. He said, what's left? He said, all she has, and from the rest of her body, it's clear to everybody. And she has full makeup on, so it makes no sense. I said, you know what? I said, you're right. And I said, this is not Islam. I said, what we're doing, they're following a shaitan. It's not from Islam. It's not accepted. So now you look at the bad misconception that the women are giving about Islam. She has to wear proper, and she's not wearing it. So this is one of the good examples we, alhamdulillah, we see, or let's not say alhamdulillah, but we see, unfortunately, that the Muslim women have fallen into. And we say alhamdulillah. I said alhamdulillah because I was looking at the next page, we're about to start, and that's what I was saying, alhamdulillah. So, it came before it's supposed to. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has showed us the path of good and the path of evil. So we can what? Follow that which is good and stay away from that which is evil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-An'am, verse 153, وَأَنَّ هَذَا صِرَاطِي مُسْتَقِيمًا فَاتَّبِعُوا وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا السُّبُلَ. Why? فَتَفَرَّقَ بِكُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِهِ. This is my path. Say, verily, this is my path, the straight path. So follow it. and do not follow the paths. Why? Because it will make you what? Go astray from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make you go astray. And that's why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he also in a hadith, when he mentioned this ayah as well, he made a khat, a straight line on the ground, and then straight lines next to it. And he said, this is the path of Allah. And next to it are paths, on the end of each of them is a shaitan calling people to this. So this now, you'll see that the importance of knowing the straight path and following the straight path. And alhamdulillah, it's clear. The straight path, it will always be clear. And the path of the mujrimeen, of the criminals, these small paths, it will always be clear as well. Allah said in Surah Al-An'am also, in verse 55, He said, وَكَذَلِكَ نُفَصِّلُ الْآيَاتِ وَلِتَسْتَبِينَ سَبِيلُ الْمُجْرِمِينَ Now, in this verse, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala said, and like this, we will make it very clear. نُفَصِّلُ الْآيَاتِ We'll make these verses very clear to you. Why? So the path of the criminals, the evil people, will be very clear. So the correct path will always be clear. And those who are evil, their path also will be very clear. May Allah guide us all to the straight path. The third point that he mentioned is the last point, and we're talking about in striving against ourselves and how to be successful and striving against our own desires. The third point he mentioned is that we have to fight and strive against the shaitan and against his followers. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very clear in the Quran. The shaitan, he's our enemy. He said, إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ فَاتَّخِذُوا عَدُوًّا Verily, that the shaitan is an adu, he's an enemy for you. So take him as an enemy. And then he says, إِنَّمَا يَدْعُ حِزْبَهُ Verily, he calls his party or his followers to be what? لِيَكُونُوا مِنْ أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ So they can be from the people of the hellfire. So the people who go behind shaitan, he doesn't want to be by himself. He wants to have as many people as he can. So that's why he's trying to pull as many of us as he can with him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he makes this very clear. So you have to realize that you're at war with shaitan all day. And this war starts from the time you wake up in the morning, and I always give the example of the alarm clock when it goes off in the morning. You're supposed to get up and go where as a man? What are you supposed to do? Go to the masjid for Salat al-Fajr. What's the first thing shaitan tells you? Snooze. Or reset it, just keep going, keep going. All of us fall into this. Why? And he'll come to you. Because shaitan, he knows, he's a faqih. He knows very well how to come to you. He say, no, don't forget. He said, you have to go to work. You have to rest. You have a family to take care of. It's wajib. Take care of your family. You need to have better rest. You didn't go to sleep early enough last night. You need more sleep. So this is how he fools us. And you say, you know what? And you're half asleep. You know what? You're right. So you turn off the alarm clock and you say, oh, maybe I'll even set it for like 45 minutes later because, yeah, I need more sleep. You're right. 8 hours a day, they said you have to have 8 hours. I haven't had 8 hours, so I have to go back to sleep. So this is where it starts. From the alarm clock that goes off Salat al-Fajr, this is where it starts. You go out of the house in the morning, what do you see on the street? Nice women in hijab, cover, you can't see anything from them. You see a lot of fitna. Now, shaitan pulls your eyes, it's like a magnet. What are you going to do? You're at war with shaitan. But he's your enemy, always remember. And what he is trying to take, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it clear here in Surah Fatir, verse 6. He's trying to pull you. لِيَكُونُوا مِنْ أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ That you can be from the people of the hellfire. May Allah protect us from that. And it's not going to be easy. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it clear to us in Surah Al-Ankabut in verse 69 when he said, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلُنَا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ Allah made it clear that those who strive for us, verily we will guide them to our ways. So if you strive for Allah, He will help you and He will assist you. And that's where we go back to the importance of understanding the Arabic language. At the end of the verse, He said, وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ Inna is for ta'keed, and the lam also is for ta'keed again to affirm it, لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ That verily Allah will be with the doers of good. So if you're a doer of a good, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will be with you and He will guide you to His ways. The time, I don't know, we started at 8:10 or 8:15 we started? 15. So we have, what was it? We have 5 more minutes? Okay, obviously because we're only to point 5, I don't think we're going to finish, so maybe in the next lecture we'll continue. But inshallah, we'll finish, we'll do point 5 and then we'll stop if there's any questions and answers, inshallah. The 5th point, this is where we finished half of them, and then we have half of them to go, inshallah. The 5th point is, continue going, or what are she saying? Searching with our hearts to understand the meanings of Allah's names and attributes, searching with our hearts to try to understand the meanings of Allah's names and attributes. And we look in the Quran, we see Allah always, when He describes Himself with these beautiful names and with these attributes. What is the goal behind this? The goal is going to come. Unfortunately, we find a lot of Muslims have gone astray on this path. Who made them go astray? Who caused them to go astray? A shaitan. So they won't get the benefit, which I'm going to mention inshallah later. So we find people that have gone astray. People will say, they say there's no names and no attributes. Others will say, yes, He has names, but their names have no meanings. Look at these people who try to make the people go astray from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Other people say, His attributes are like those of the creation, a'udhu billah. Others say, no, He has attributes, but He has names, but He only has 7. So what are the rest of them? Crazy stuff. It's mind-boggling. Where do they get this stuff from? And they believe this. Why is this? So shaitan can cut off the path for us to fill our hearts with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do we know the greatness of Allah? How do we know the greatness of Allah? Through His names and through His attributes. Allah is the original name. All the other names, is there any other difference between, for example, Ar-Rahman and between Allah? Is there any other difference? Same thing. But when you see all the different names, the 99 names or more than that, the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it shows you how great He is. And the Arab themselves, they have this in Arabic language. For example, the Asad. The Asad, the lion, how many names does it have in Arabic? 100 names. The Saif, the sword, because it's something also great. How many names does it have? 100 names. So also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has these beautiful names and attributes to show His greatness to His creation. And what's meant by these names and attributes is for us to act upon them. Not just to say them. It's for them to have an effect on our lives. For example, we know Allah is the Sami' al-Basir. He is the all-hearing, the all-seeing subhanahu wa ta'ala. How does this affect our actions? How does it affect our actions? Now if somebody wants to sit down and wants to look at that which is haram, on TV, on the internet, whatever have you. It's so easy now to do it which is haram. Not like when we were younger, when you have to do something before, it would be very difficult. I'm talking before I was Muslim anyway, so I was held accountable. But if you want to do something that was haram, it was very difficult to find it. No, very easy. On the internet or TV, it's right there in front of you, very easy. So now, nobody's in the room with you. You can look at that which is haram. You can do that which is haram. But you remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's looking at you. He sees what you're doing. So this has the effect on your iman. This is the goal. Then the other names. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the Kareem. He's the all-generous, the Raheem, the all-merciful. He's the Latif, His kindness, the Ghafoor, the all-forgiving. When somebody has all these beautiful names and these attributes, how does it affect your heart? It fills your heart with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It attaches your heart to who? To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not like the other religions. We have to go a long way. You have to go to the priest and confess and all this. And it's a long pattern until you get your sins forgiven. In Islam, we go straight to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now, this attaches your heart to Allah and it fills your heart with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the 5th point. And I will stop there because... Okay, it's up to you guys. The other points are not as long as the other ones. The other one. Continue? Okay, bismillah. I mean, these points are actually much shorter than the other ones anyways. Okay, so bismillah. The 6th point is in reflecting on the blessings and the kindness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Reflecting on the blessings and the kindness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And from these blessings are so many. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, if we were to try to count them, we could never count them. There's too many of them. And one of the ones I want to mention now is an example. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for example in Surah Al-Dhariyat, وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. In yourself, do not notice, do not reflect on the ni'mah, the blessing you have in yourself. Allah says in Surah Al-Mulk, and in Surah Al-Mulk, قُلْ هُوَ الَّذِي أَنشَأَكُمْ وَجَعَلَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ قَلِيلًا مَا تَشْكُرُونَ. So He is the one that He has created us, and He has made for us the hearing, the seeing, and the hearts. Why? Do not reflect. Do not thankful. Do not have tashkurun. Are you not thankful for all these blessings? So we reflect on these blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us. Even when we see the sunnah, if we see someone who's been afflicted with an illness or he's crippled, what are we supposed to say? Alhamdulillah alladhi afana. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from that He has any forgiven us. We don't have the same illness or the same defect that this person has. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for ni'mah. And this is from the hikmah, what people say, why are some people crippled? Why are some people blind? As a reminder to us, as one of the hikmahs from it, is a reminder to us of the blessing that we have. And I'll tell you one of the best stories I've heard about this. It was by Sheikh Muhammad Hassan, may Allah protect him. He mentioned that one time he visited a brother in Egypt, in a hospital. He was a doctor at a mental institute. They call it Mustashfa al-Majaneen in Arabic, which is kind of, I guess, the English term is better. A mental institute, or we translate as a crazy person's hospital. A person who has what? Has lost, and who is not sane. And they have these hospitals, people who are, may Allah cure them and bring them back to their right state of mind, but they have special hospitals for these people. So he said, as we were sitting there, he said, a young lady came into the room, and he said she looked perfectly normal. And she was very beautiful. She was right in front of us. He said, I looked down, not to look at her, obviously as a woman in front of us, and she said, then she started to dance. So the Sheikh is looking down, what's this? As she starts to dance, she starts to strip from her clothes, take off all her clothes, until she's naked, standing there in front of the Sheikh. The Sheikh is looking down like this now. What is this? And then she comes and takes the qutra, like I have on my head, off the head of the Sheikh. And the Sheikh is like, whoa, what is this, you know? So they came, they actually grabbed her and took her away. And the doctor was there. He said, I'm so sorry, Sheikh. He said, I know this one, she looks very normal. She's a beautiful girl, she looks normal, but she's crazy. She has no idea what she's doing. So the Sheikh, he said, subhanAllah, he said, I benefited so much from this story. He said, wallahi, did I ever thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessing of being sane? He said, wallahi, I never did before that day. Ask yourself now, have you ever thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you're not mentally ill? Alhamdulillah, it's a great ni'mah, a great blessing. And most of us have not thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this. So this is what we need to do. We need to reflect on this, on these blessings, Allah's kindness. Now if we look at the other countries who are in war and this, and the people who are not eating, and we look at the ni'mah we have, there's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This fills our heart with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The seventh way to fill our heart with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is humbling our hearts in front of Allah. And when you look in the beginning of Surah Al-Mu'minun, when Allah praises the believers, Al-Mu'minun, who have been successful, what's the first characteristic He mentions? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Verily, the believers have been successful. What's the first characteristic He mentions after that? الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. Those who are in their prayers, خَاشِعُونَ. They're humble in their prayers. They benefit from their prayers. So humbling our hearts in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because nobody can forgive us except for who? Except for Allah. We cannot gain any khair in this dunya, in the akhirah, and the hereafter, except through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we humble our hearts in front of Allah. We attach our hearts to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and through this, inshallah, we will fill our hearts with the love of Allah. If you look at the ones who came before us from the scholars of Islam and the pious ones in Islam, and look at their prayer and look at our prayer. We mentioned the examples before, the people when they go and they think about the things of the dunya. Here's two examples. Ibn Zubayr, Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu anhuma, his nickname was Hamamat al-Masjid, the pigeon of the masjid. Why? Because he was always there in the masjid. Just like, a pigeon is always in a certain area, that's where he was. And they said when he used to make sujood, that the pigeons itself, they would come and they would land on his back. Because how long he would be in sujood and prostrate and making dua, the birds would actually think it was a non-human and come and land on his back and just, kind of hang out on his back for some time because he's there in sujood, subhanAllah. You see how they were in our salat. And now, we're like the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, like the chicken who pecks quickly. We're in a hurry to get done because we have to check our phone, make sure who called us, our BlackBerry if we have the BlackBerry. If we have BBF, you know BBF? My students say, no, sir, it's BBM. BlackBerry, I said, no, it's BBF. Blackberry fever. Where they're addicted. And now I had a student today, for the second time, I caught her with her BlackBerry. So I took it. And she said, no, I'll die without it, sir. You can't give it into the administration. She said, I'll be the best student. Wallahi, for the first time, she's answering all the questions. I said, well, I didn't know you could do this. She's one of the worst students in the class, but today, mashallah, tabarakallah. Everything I asked, tak, tak, tak. If she didn't know it, she's opened up the notes, and she found it right away. Mashallah, tabarakallah. Because she has what, BBF. She has to have it with her. So subhanAllah, it's addictive. So now we're in a hurry to pray. Muslim ibn Yasar from the Salaf, rahimahullah, they said that the masjid he was praying in, the wall collapsed inside the masjid. And it startled all the people in the market around the masjid. And they looked in, they found him still in his prayer. Didn't even move from his prayer because he was so concentrated on it, he didn't even realize the wall had collapsed. And now anything that happens around us, we know. Also, one of the Sahaba, when he had to get his leg amputated, they said, go to him when he's in prayer and then amputate his leg. Because he wouldn't take anesthesia. So he said, how can we do it? They said he won't even feel it. He won't even budge. He said, believe us, just do it. So they went and they cut off his leg as he was praying to amputate it for their operation. And he didn't realize what was happening to him because he was so focused on his prayer. Some people say we'll never reach that level. Okay, let's say even we don't reach that level. If we reach 25% of that level, 25% only, is it good? That's a ni'mah, it's a blessing. So what we need to focus on is trying to humble our hearts in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our acts of worship. Some of the things that can help us, I have 3 points here that can help us in humbling our hearts and benefiting from our salat. When it comes to having khushu' and being humble in our prayers, the first way is to empty our heart from everything else. And this is when you know the importance of salat, the status of salat in Islam. You know the status of this, the importance of this. Empty your heart from everything. We mentioned before the importance of doing the nawafil as a warm-up, because it actually prepares you for the salat itself. The second thing is understanding the meanings of what you're saying. And this is very important for the non-Arabs, because you're speaking a language you don't understand. So you're saying things, it's like it becomes a routine. You don't understand what you're saying. But when you understand what you're saying, you have the people who understand Arabic to reflect on the meanings, so also it doesn't become a routine, it's something you say without meanings. You need to know the meanings of what you're saying and reflect on them. And thirdly, to know the greatness of who you're standing in front of, subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know the greatness of Allah. If we were to go now to one of the rulers or somebody important, how will we be standing in front of them? They said, no, you stand in front of you, be standing straight to make sure you look good, you know, and this, and we're standing in front of Allah. Some people look at the watch and this, you know. Some people might take his cell phone, you know, see, he's praying, he's looking around, has his hands down this, one leg in the front, like he's bored, like this. So now we think about the greatness who we're standing in front of. Obviously, this helps us in humbling our hearts in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The eighth way to fill our heart with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is isolating ourselves for the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the last third of the night when He descends subhanahu wa ta'ala to the sky of the dunya to pray and to read His words of the Quran and to call upon Him to make dua subhanahu wa ta'ala. Isolating ourselves during this time. How does it affect our iman? We see that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam focused on qiyam al-layl, the night prayer, even before the salat was made fard in Islam. They used to have salat, they knew salat, but it was not made fard, the 5 daily prayers, until 3 years before the hijrah. So now, even from the beginning of Islam, he focused on the da'wah al-tawheed, the pure Islamic monotheism, and secondly, the night prayer. What were the effects of this later when they went to Medina? When issues came, the khamr became haram, the different fara'id came, jihad became wajib, all these things, because they were very strong in their iman. They were able to take anything that came to them. So this is the effects it have. And also one of the greatest ways to gain ikhlas is through the night prayer, because nobody can see you do it. Now when you go to the masjid, mashallah, tabarakallah, he's a salih, he's a pious person, you always see him in the 5 prayers. But the night prayer, who sees you? Nobody except who? Except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you sacrifice from this time, and you get up and you pray at night, and you strive for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is one of the best ways to fill your heart with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He praises in Surah Al-Sajdah in verse 16, when He praises the people of the night prayer. He said, تَتَجَافَى جُنُوبُهُمْ عَنِ الْمَضَاجِعِ, and their sides come up from their beds, from the rest. Why? What are they doing? يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ خَوْفًا وَطَمَعًا. They call on their Lord through hope and through fear. And this is you see the praise. Also He says in another verse, in the Dhariyat, verse 17-18, كَانُوا قَلِيلًا مِنَ اللَّيْلِ مَا يَهْجَعُونَ وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ. That very little through the night they did not what? Pray. And at the ashar, before the fajr time, they are seeking forgiveness, making istighfar. And you'll see that the salaf, the pious predecessors who came before us, they used to become very happy if the night came. Yafrahun. They became very happy if the night came. Why? Because it's time to sleep after a long day's work. because it's time for the night prayer is closer now. And that's why Abu Sulaiman ad-Darani, rahimahullah, he said that the people of the night prayer in their night, he said they find more pleasure in the people who are playing around with fun and games than they find in their nights. And he said, if it wasn't for the night, I wouldn't want to stay in this dunya. And Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu anhu, he said, if it wasn't for three things, I wouldn't want to stay in this dunya. He mentioned from them seeking knowledge and benefiting from knowledge, and he mentioned from jihad and fi sabilillah, and he mentioned the night prayer. So night prayer, you see the effect it had on them and their iman, and this is how you can fill your heart with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ninth point, and we're almost there, alhamdulillah, because I know maybe sometimes the sisters, they have more desire than their brothers, and the brothers, some kind of the faces are kind of, getting longer now, inshallah. Nobody said okay, by the way, from the brothers. Only one person. We had the sisters said okay. One brother said continue. The rest of the brothers were like, I'm not going to say anything, but alhamdulillah. So we're almost there. We have 2 quick points, inshallah, we'll finish. The ninth point, or how to fill your love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fill your heart with the love of Allah, is any loving and sitting with the pious. Those people who are pious, loving them and sitting with them, and trying to benefit from the good things they say and what they have to offer for you. As we mentioned, for example, Sheikh when we used to sit with him, we would grow in iman. You see the student who would go away from sitting with him, he used to be subhanallah, alhamdulillah. He'd be trying to be like the Sheikh, and he'd be benefiting. Because when you sit with the pious people, you gain from them. And we mentioned what Umar ibn Khattab said, the 3 things he mentioned, and from them was talab al-ilm, obviously sitting and benefiting from the scholars of Islam as well. And as the Prophet ﷺ said, al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi, falyanzur ahadukum man yukhalil. That a person is on the religion of his friend. So one of you should see who he befriends, because this is how they're going to affect you. When you see somebody who is pious and somebody who is good, what is he going to remind you of? Of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Becoming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you sit with somebody of the dunya, he's going to talk to you about BlackBerry, the new Dunkin' Donuts, if there's anything new, I don't know. And just things of the dunya. About the new car, Lamborghini this, Ferrari that. And he's miskin, he's poor like you, he can't buy it either, but just because his heart's attached to these dunya things, he's talking about it. This is how it's going to affect you. And then maybe he'll say, okay, it's shisha time. Let's have some shisha, why not? And then it's time, oh, there's a good film coming on TV now. So he's calling you to what? So you need to see who is your friend. And Ibn al-Jawzi, rahimahullah, very beneficial, I'll mention it quickly. He mentioned, when you pick a friend, you choose a friend, he says you'll focus on 5 characteristics that you find in this person. 5 characteristics. He said the first one is that, obviously, that he's somebody who's sane, somebody who's aqil. If he's not sane, obviously, you're going to turn majnoon with him as well. So he has to be sane. Secondly, he has to have good character and good manners. A person who has good character and good manners, because obviously you want that to rub off on you as well. Thirdly, that he's not fasiq. He's not somebody who's disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Somebody who does a lot of haram. So obviously this is going to affect you in the same way. And thirdly, or fourthly, that he's not somebody who's somebody who has innovated in the religion. Because even if he's calling to do religious aspects of the religion, or religious things, but it's not from the religion itself, it's something innovated, it's no good. You're going to come with Yawm al-Qiyamah and you'll be doing things you think is religious, but it will be a sin instead of benefiting. And fifthly, that he's not somebody who strives for the dunya. His heart is attached to the dunya, because if it's, obviously, as we mentioned in the stories, he's also going to have you this. And we want you to understand, and we live in a society where the dunya is very strong here. It's okay to have things from the dunya if it's what helps you to get to the hereafter. Now to have a nice car, have a nice clean house, which helps you and you reflect and helps you relax so you can focus on your ibadah. These are all good things. It's not something we shouldn't have. We have to sleep, on the ground. A man comes home tonight and he says, no, honey, look, we heard the Sheikh said about the dunya. We have to throw out the bed. We have to sleep on the floor. We have to make sure we have zuhud in the dunya. That's not what we mean. But you don't want to go to extremes all the time. Islam is always something that's in the middle. In any aspect of Islam, you always find something in the middle. We don't want to be somebody who walks around with ripped up shoes and ripped up clothes and we say, oh, we don't want to be attached to the dunya. Because as the Prophet said when he was asked about a person who likes to have a nice stove, nice clothes and nice shoes, he said, Inna Allah jamilun yuhibbul jamal. Verily Allah is beautiful and He loves something that's beautiful. So we'll always have something that's in the middle path. After that, we have something we'll mention. Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned, and I'll mention them quickly as well, 5 or 6 points. I'll mention 5 of them, about what you gain from sitting with the pious people. What do you gain when you sit with those who are pious, the salihin? He said, first of all, they take you from shak to yaqeen, from uncertainty to certainty. And that's very important in your iman, that you have yaqeen in your iman. So they take you to the level of yaqeen. And then from riya to ikhlas. From that which is riya, you're doing for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have shirk, to ikhlas, to have sincerity in all of your actions. Because obviously the people who are really pious, they are sincere in their actions. So they guide you to that as well. And then from the ghafla to the dhikr. And the absent-mindedness to be remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then from the raghbah, the desire in the dunya, to the desire in the hereafter. And also he mentioned from the kibr to the tawadu, from being somebody who is proud or conceited to somebody who is humble. The last point that Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned in the ways to fill our hearts with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was staying away from all the things that come between our hearts and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Staying away from all of the things that come between our hearts and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And people differ when it comes to this. Everybody has their weak points. And the thing that comes between him and Allah. Look at the story, and always remind yourself of this story, the story of Abu Talib. Abu Talib, did he die as a Muslim or a non-Muslim? Non-Muslim. Did he strive for Islam, to spread and to help Islam? Yes, he did. He probably did more than most of any of us will ever do for Islam, and he was a kafir. What came between him and did he deny the fact that what the Prophet ﷺ was saying was haqq, was the truth, and Islam was the truth? Did he deny it? No, he didn't. He knew it was the truth. Why didn't he accept? Because he had a weak point. And his companions, we go back to about having good friends who call he was good, he had bad friends. And the peer pressure got to him when he's on his deathbed. The Prophet ﷺ came to him, he said, Ya am, qulu kalima, my uncle, say a word that will be able to defend you with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from this word. Say la ilaha illallah. So he knows it's the truth, and he wants to say it. He's on his deathbed. But then on the other side of the room, he has Abu Jahl and the crew from Quraysh who want to call him to evil, and they know his weak spot. His weak spot is the traditions, the tribalism, the thing that the forefathers were on. This is his weak spot, and they knew it. So the shaitan Abu Jahl says to him, he looks at him, "Atarghab al-millat Abdul Muttalib? Will you turn away from the religion of your grandfather, your father? Hey, and be careful. How will people remember you if you reject the religion of your father?" So this was his weak point. So he said that he's on the millah, the religion of Abdul Muttalib, and he died. May Allah protect us all from that. So now everybody knows his weak point. What becomes between your heart and between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And we need to focus on, there might be a lot of things. There might be things that are greater. So you have to start pulling yourself away from these things. It could be the environment you're in, the people you hang out with, these type of things. So each weak point you have, we have to focus on getting this away from ourselves so it doesn't become between our hearts and between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And with this and the other 9 that we mentioned, inshallah, we will fill our hearts with the love of Allah. And that brings us to the end of today's lecture. And Allahu alam, wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad. If there's any questions, I don't know the routine here, how it's done. If this is asked verbally or if they send written questions, I don't know how you do it. And so how you do it, inshallah. If you're in Rome, do like the Romans, huh? Ibn al-Jawzi, so you pay attention to Ibn al-Jawzi. There's Ibn al-Jawzi and Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyya. Don't get confused with it. Ibn al-Qayyim, he's the famous Imam. Ibn al-Jawzi also is a famous Imam. He was from the Hanbali scholars. And he focused a lot on the things, like these things that you benefit. Who do you choose as a friend? The things to correct your heart and he focused on a lot of these things. He wrote a lot of interesting books on different topics. He was one of the most famous authors. He wrote so many books. He would not just focus, he was good in fiqh, good in hadith, good in all these things. He was a major scholar. But he would write, different books about different, things, like a recreational type books. He wrote a lot of these as well. Just a book like to kick back and relax when you read it. He wrote a lot of books like this. So he was a famous scholar, Ibn al-Jawzi, rahimahullah. Any other questions? Whether from the brothers or sisters? The brothers seem like they're ready to go, mashallah. Long day at work.
You mentioned that if you want to humble yourself in the prayers, you have to empty your heart from everything. How do you do that?
First of all, by focusing on the importance, you focus on the importance of the prayer. And we mentioned before also to focus on who you're standing in front of, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And emptying your heart, you have to, it's something that takes mujahid, strive. It's not something easy to do. You have to strive to do it. And we even mentioned the thing about the nawafil at first, to kind of get yourself in the routine. If you focus also on the meanings we mentioned, because, for example, one of the things when the dua of istiftah, which is the introductory dua or supplication, even what the scholars mentioned, he said it serves as a reminder as yourself to before you start to read the Quran, before you start to focus on the salat, then you need to focus on start emptying your heart. So you have to strive to do it. It's not easy. You have to fight off a shaitan and try to focus. And we mentioned some of the things that helps you is to remind yourself who you're standing in front of. You're standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to focus on the meanings of what you're reading. Because if you focus on the meanings, this will affect obviously what you're saying. And you look at the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the Prophet ﷺ, when he would read, he would stop and reflect sometimes. If he came to an ayah that had something about the people of the Nar or something like this, of the hellfire, he would seek refuge in Allah. If there was something to be asked, he would ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Which means he would what? He would reflect on what he was reading. And he knew the meanings of it. So we need to reflect on the meanings and understand them. And also you think about the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the greatness of salat. And inshallah, these are some of the things that help you. Maybe we can go into detail more, inshallah, in the future. Even maybe a lecture about that, about ways to find khushu in salat, inshallah ta'ala. These are maybe some of the basic ways. Any other questions? Every place has its own way in questions. I've gone hours, I don't know how you do it here. When we were in Qatar, the questions come from the lady's side and it comes down from the top. You see them falling down onto the thing. So I could see them falling down and from the back. I'd say, Google this question, Google that question. Their sisters would throw the questions down, mashallah. So every place has its own way. So that's it, sisters, no other questions? And call it a night. Okay. The du'as that are in salat, no. The du'as outside of salat, obviously you say in your own language. The du'as in salat, you say them only in Arabic. But the du'as outside of salat, it's better to actually say it in your own language so you understand what you're saying. And I mentioned this yesterday when I was filming, or the day before yesterday, when I was filming for Sharjah TV, a new program I'm doing about Hajj. The importance of making du'a when you make tawaf in your Hajj, in your own language. Because a lot of people now, they do ignorant things. They take these books that have the meanings, or they have the Arabic du'as, and they're making du'a. They have one guy who reads Arabic, so he might understand if he reads it. So he's making the du'a, Ya Raheem, in the back, Ya Raheem, Ya Ghafur, Ya Ghafur. And they have no idea what they're saying. And that's not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. He understands all the languages. He wants us to focus on these days on humbling ourselves and making du'a, repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should focus on doing it in our own language. Even if you know Arabic and English, or you know Arabic and Urdu, but you find that you have more khushu' when you make du'a in Urdu, when you're in sujood, for example. Make du'a in Urdu, because you want to have the effect on your heart. This is the goal, is for it to affect your heart. And I remember when I was in Mecca, I was in Masjid al-Haram, and my friend was from the UK, was there. He was making tawaf, and he understands Arabic. He studied in al-Qura in Mecca. So he said, you never believe what just happened. I said, what happened? He said, the guys were reading the du'a book that they bought from in front of the Haram, and they went to the footnote. And the footnote said, يمكن تكرار هذا الدعاء يعني كما تشاء. That you can repeat this dua as many times as you want. So he didn't know what it meant, so he read it. So يمكن تكرار هذا الدعاء. So in the back, يمكن تكرار هذا الدعاء كما تشاء. They're all saying behind him, you can repeat this dua as many times as you want. So you see the, they fall into stupidity, unfortunately, because they don't know what they're reading, and they make fools of themselves. And this is not what we're supposed to be doing. And certain things that are in dua, certain du'as you make it, as the Prophet ﷺ did in the salat or even in the hajj itself, you make them in Arabic because they're in Arabic. But the dua, you make dua, focus on your language. But inshallah, eventually, as our teacher used to always say to us, and I still remember his words even today, when we went to the second level in the Arabic department in the University of Medina, he used to tell us every day, he was very, very good. And he was the son of one of the major scholars, Sheikh Rahimullah, in Medina, from Nigeria originally, but the Saudi national. And he used to always say to us, كُلُّ جَدِيدٍ صَعْبٌ. It's basic information, but he used to always say it. Everything new is difficult. But he used to say it so much. And he used to say it just like this, كُلُّ جَدِيدٍ صَعْبٌ. So now it's still in my head. So now you know anything new is difficult. Anything new you want to do. If I want to learn about computers now, I don't know much. If I want to get specialized to be an IT specialist, is it going to be easy? It's going to be difficult at first. Once I start to get the hang of it, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be easy at the end. Also, when you start to memorize du'as and you don't have Arabic language, the first one's very difficult. The second one, like the third one, you start to get the hang of it. Your tongue starts to adjust to it. You start to learn. You come to the center, for example. I'm sure they have Arabic lessons here. You start to learn alif, ba, ta, tha, jim, ha. You start to learn the Arabic alphabet, and your tongue starts to come with it. And then, inshallah, eventually, you'll get it, inshallah ta'ala. Excuse me, dua, I didn't catch the last part. No, there's never been confirmed that you read Quran in sujood. Not in sujood, not in ruku. No, no. The verses of your dua, you can use these obviously. Like for example, at the end of Surah Al-Baqarah or something like this, these are dua, you can use these because they're dua themselves. This okay. But if Fatiha, it's never been confirmed that you read it elsewhere. So you're not supposed to read it only in the spots. And because you have certain adiyah you're supposed to use, as the Prophet ﷺ used to do. And at the same time, you have the the general dua that you make dua and ask for things. في نص أبو عبد العزيز في النهي في نص. There's also a hadith, I'm not remembering the exact text, where it's forbidden actually to read the Quran in sujood and ruku' as well. So it actually is forbidden in another hadith, but I'm not remembering the exact text. But we asked here Sheikh Shadi, and he says he confirms it as well. I remembered it, but I don't remember the text. So you're not allowed to read it in sujood or in ruku'. The brothers are ready to go, but so with sisters, you have the floor, inshallah. But if you have questions, make it quick. So. Okay, I understand the question. And in general, I don't agree that you cannot distance yourself, because I myself work in an environment like that, where the majority of the people with us are non-Muslims, of the staff. But I'm able to distance myself. I practice my religion. We have a school that basically has an Islamic, any I guess you could say, any values into it. In general, we do have the majority of the teachers are non-Muslims. So the thing is, and we mix with them, obviously we have to, because we're in the same place. But at certain times, you'll find yourself, I'll be with the good Muslim brothers who are practicing, and I won't be with them. I don't sit with them all the time. You don't have to. For example, when you eat your lunch, you're not forced to eat your lunch with them. You might want to, and then Shaitan will say, actually it's a good da'wah thing, but they're giving da'wah to you, you're not giving da'wah to them at the end of the day, is the problem. So you start to get affected, and that's what happens. So now, you can distance yourself to it. You might not be able to 100%, like for example, meetings, you have to go to meetings. But you have to, also, you have to try to an extent to distance yourself, because you can't sit with the people who are evil, especially if they're talking evil about Islam. Also, you can give them advice, say, please, do not talk badly about our religion. And also, so you know that by law here, to talk offensive about Islam, it's against the law. And they could actually be deported from the country. So, even though you hear a lot of things here, it's very open, like on the streets and how people dress and what have you. At the same time, the government here, they're very strict about any offensive things against Islam. They don't go for it. So you have to be, the people have to be very careful about that. So you can even throw that at them, for example, oh, by the way, the law is this, let's just please, I don't want you to get in trouble. And I don't want you to offend me as a Muslim, So they don't want to get in trouble because they're here making more money than they will make in their own countries, So this is the case with a lot of many ways. So, these are certain ways, but you try to distance yourself as much as possible. I know sometimes it might be difficult, you're mixing, but But obviously, even Allah commanded us, if you're sitting with the people who are talking in ill manner or about bad things, that you must distance yourself and go away from them. So you must try to an extent, even if you can't do it 100%. And at the end of the day, if you feel it's a job that is really, really affecting your religion, and it's making your religion very bad, look for another job. And مَنْ تَرَكَ شَيْءٍ لِلَّهِ عَوَضَ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا مِنْهُ. Whoever leaves something for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will give him better in return. And this is what we have to have. This comes to the issue of iman. Is our heart going to be attached to what's pleasing to Allah, or what's going to be attached to the dunya? Is Allah, is here the Razzaq? He's the one who gives us the dunya is where we get our provision from. So we have to, this is the issue of iman. And I don't say now, go tomorrow and resign. Look for another job. At the same time, when you find it, go resign. And now you're doing it for iman. And then inshallah, these are ways, inshallah, bidnillah, to get to that problem. Is that the last question, or is there more? Okay. جزاكم الله خيرا وبارك الله فيكم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد.